Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our session on perspectives on peace negotiations. So, we're going to hear from our speaker, Raj, who will be talking about the challenges to the Intra-Afghan peace deal and the future of Afghanistan. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just put them in the chat. Then once the presentation is complete, we'll have time to get to the Q&A. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Rajarshi Chakraborty, and I am a PhD scholar in Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. This is my final year in PhD, and today I'm going to talk on the challenges to intra-Afghan peace deal and the future of Afghanistan. But before talking about the peace deal, uh, um, I'll, I'll I'll say briefly about the history of conflict in Afghanistan and the rise of Taliban, the invasion of international security assistance forces led by the United States and all, and then I'll come to the peace process one. So, in modern times, um, in 1960s, when the Afghan government, when the Afghan government got its support from the Soviet Union, that the first time the United States involved in the country, because at that point of time, Cold War was going on, and Soviet Union was increasing their presence in the South Asian region, and that's why it supported the Afghanistan government. And at that point, United States supported the local ethnic groups, the local resistant people in Afghanistan, also named that the Mujahideen people, to tackle down the Soviet influence in the country. And in 1989, when the Cold War was almost over, the Soviet Union was very weak to run on its own. They left the country, and the Soviet backed government was present in Afghanistan till 1992, led by the Najibullah government. And when the Najibullah government, backed by Soviet Union, the government collapsed, and after that point, United States withdraw all kind of support from the Afghan Mujahideen out from the country, and the sudden absence of any big powers in the country created a power vacuum, a massive power vacuum in Afghanistan. The Mujahideen groups, the ethnic groups, they had no unity at that point of time, and they started fighting each other over power and all. And in 1994, 1995, Taliban government, came to the picture, and in 1996 they formed the government. And after forming the Taliban government, the first country to recognize the Taliban government was Pakistan. So since the very beginning of the Taliban government in Afghanistan, Pakistan and this Taliban leaders, they have a very cordial relationship between them. After that, we all know that 9/11 happened, and in 2001, in September, the International Security Assistance Forces, led by the United States, came to Afghanistan to tackle down the Al Qaeda issue, to wipe out the Al Qaeda and its associated networks and all. And in the very first year, in 2001, 2002, they got a huge success, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization troops and the International Security Assistance Force. And the main goal of the United States to come to Afghanistan was, of course, to wipe out the Al Qaeda and the terrorist organizations and all. So after the initial success, when most of the Taliban leaders were thrown away from the country, most of them took shelter in the neighboring countries, mainly in Pakistan. And in 2003, the international community, mainly United States, they realized that they cannot leave Afghanistan just like that. So what they decide? they decided to make a stable government, a democratic government in Afghanistan. And this is the first time this democratic principles was included in Afghanistan, was, or because the term democracy was completely foreign to the people of Afghanistan. So in 2003, the international community, they arranged an election, and in 2004, the following year, the Afghan government enacted their new constitution. Although the constitution was democratic in nature, but there are some clause in the Afghan constitution that completely followed the Islamic Sharia law. So, for instance, the Article 1, 2, Article 17, 18, these are the main article which completely followed the Islamic Sharia law. And in Afghanistan, the election was won by Hamid Karzai, the former president of Afghanistan, and he was the first president in 2007 who made a peace approach to the Taliban leaders staying in Afghanistan and in Pakistan. And in 2007, the Taliban government, the Taliban leaders, they rejected the peace approach led by Ashraf Ghani, saying that this was an Western effort because the Taliban always believed that the elected Afghan government in Kabul was just a puppet government of the United States, of the Western governments and all. So that's why they initially they rejected the peace approach of Ashraf Ghani. Then in 2010, the United States of government, they killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, and they had a huge success over the terrorist networks and all. And just after killing Osama bin Laden in 2011, Obama administration, former US administration, they announced that following 2011, they will start withdrawing their troops from Afghanistan. Now, some experts believe that this was a very rushed decision in the part of Obama, because at that point of time, although the economy was stable in Afghanistan, the security scenario bit improved in the country, the social indicators were improving, but it was not the ultimate goal of the international community. So in that regard, the experts believe that it was a rush decision in uh, uh, in the part of Obama administration. Now, during that during the longest war of the U.S. history, the United States has helped to build the Afghan National Army, Afghan police, and that's how they improved the security situation in the country. They improved the economic situation in Afghanistan, and the other social benefits as well. So I think we can all see the presentation here, where the strength of Afghan National Army throughout the years. Uh, in 2003, the number was nearly 2,000, and when in 2014, when the most of the troops withdrawal from the country, the number was nearly 2 lakhs. So that's a huge improvement of the Afghan National Army. This data, it's a bit old, but any reliable government data following 2014 was not available. So that's why I'm putting this data only. And although the number of the Afghan National Army increased, but when it comes to the capacity of the National Army or the Afghan National Police, they did not improve as expected. Because even during the presence of international security forces in the country, some casualties happened, that the terrorist attack, the conflict was there in the country and all. So the next slide, this is the number of deaths in Afghanistan due to terrorism for 2007 to 2018. So in 2007, the number was quite low, nearly 2,000, and then the 2018 saw the highest number of deaths in Afghanistan due to terrorism. So this this bar graph shows that even during the presence of the international security forces, the terrorist network, the terrorist organizations were also there in the country. They were also present in the country, like Taliban, like Haqqani network, like the Al Qaeda and all. And this Taliban and the Al Qaeda and Haqqani network, they work as a shadow government in the country, because the Afghanistan is a very harsh land, mainly the mountainous region, and desert region and all. So the central government, the elected government, it's very difficult for them to reach out to people in the very remote areas and all. And in these remote areas, in these remote provinces, the presence of the Taliban and these other ethnic groups and landlords who are very active. And economically, this Taliban and the other groups, they sustain on the opium cultivation in the country. This bar graph shows the opium cultivation in Afghanistan by hectares in thousands, and it clearly shows that 2017 it had the highest number of opium cultivation in the country till now. And this is the potential opium production in the country from 2001 to 2018. And these are the main source of main financial source of the Taliban groups and networks. And this is the annual GDP growth in the country since 2006 to 2019. And in 2014, we know that most of the international troops are gone from Afghanistan. And in 2009, 2010, 2008, 2008, the GDP rate was very high. It was in two digit. In 2010, it was 10.2 percentage GDP growth than the previous year and all. But following 2014, we can see that the DGP growth fluctuated, and it decreased. The main reason is the international security forces, the Afghanistan, they they never tried to build, or they had a very little impact in building the indigenous Afghan economy. Because Afghanistan is mainly agricultural land, they have few minerals sources and all. But during the presence of international security forces, the Western countries, the Western community, they mainly focused on the service sectors and all. So the GDP growth in 2008, 2010, these are these are due to the presence of service sector in the country, not because any kind of indigenous Afghan economic sector. But in social sector, the country has improved a lot. The literacy rate, it has increased. In 2003 it was 34%, whereas in 2018 it increased to 43%. Although the literacy rate could have been improved more, but at least it improved for the country. And when it comes to the male and female enrollment number in general education, the ratio of female education increased for sure. And this was a huge achievement on the part of the international security forces, because during the time of Taliban government from 1996 to 2001, the women, they have mainly this domestic work, domestic activities. They are not allowed to go outside, they are not allowed to attend the school and all. But the involvement of the international security forces, the Western countries, it improved a lot. And even now, the Afghan parliament, it has 28% of women's participation, which is a huge success for a patriarchal country like Afghanistan. And my last two bar graphs, it shows the under five infant mortality rate per thousand births, which decreased throughout the year. So even in the health sector improved in the presence of international security forces. And this is the infant mortality rate per thousand births. Even this indicator has improved over the time. So, but the main conflict, the main peace process, it was needed in the year of 2014, when most of the international security assistance forces, decided to leave the country and all. So in I think in 2000, after following 2014, only 10,000 international security forces were present in the country, and the first peace attempt was made by by the Pakistan government. The Pakistan government, they initiated the peace process between the Taliban government and the Afghan elected Afghan government. Although it didn't, it was not successful, because at that point of time, the Afghan government, they believe that the Taliban leaders are not legitimate enough to sit on the table and talk and all. And since then, Pakistan has tried a couple of times to negotiate, to balance the negotiation, to make peace arrangements between Afghanistan and Taliban. And I'll read out those initiation, like the Heart of Asia Istanbul process, which was initiated by Pakistan. Later in 2017, Pakistan, Afghanistan, China, they had a trilateral dialogue for peace with the Taliban. Later on, Pakistan involved in the Moscow plan initiated by Russia, and the last one is the quadrilateral group where Afghanistan, China, Pakistan, and United States were very much active in the peace process. But all of those peace process failed due to various reasons. Sometimes the Afghan government didn't consider the Taliban leaders as legitimate actors, and sometimes the Taliban leaders, they thought that the elected Afghan government in Kabul, they are just Western puppets, so they didn't come forward for the peace process. And then United States, who is so who has a major goal in Afghanistan, is a major purpose in Afghanistan in 2001, and that point of time, removing Al Qaeda was their main goal. But uh, there are the other goals of United States at that point of time was to have a military base in Afghanistan, because at that point of time, Saddam Hussein was alive in Iraq, and there was always the Iran issue with the United States. So those are the various reasons that helped that were the contributing factors in for the United States to come to Afghanistan and make their base and all. Yeah, but the other regional factors, the other role of regional powers is also important when it comes to the peace process in Afghanistan. Like Russia always sought for a peaceful country in Afghanistan, because Russia believed that in the southern region of Russia, the terrorist activities, it's mainly due to the rise of Taliban leaders in the country, and all. Other than Russia, another major player in South Asia dealing with Afghanistan is Iran. Previously, Iran and Afghanistan, they had they didn't have a very positive relationship, because when the Taliban government was there in Afghanistan, Taliban was only the Sunni group, and Iran was mainly administered by the Shia community. So Taliban and Iran, they didn't have a very good relationship. But when the United States and international security forces, they come to Afghanistan, and Iran and Taliban both had their similar issues with the United States. But the Iran and the Taliban government, they trying to mend their issues in between. And even following 2014, the Taliban leaders, they approached the Iranian leaders and all, because Taliban government, they always think that today or tomorrow the international security forces, they have to leave the country. They don't have time, they don't have money and all, and that's what we are seeing right now. Even before the US election in the country, both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they they sought for the complete withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. And when Donald Trump came to power, they signed an agreement. It was not a peace agreement which was signed in 2020, I think 27th or 28th February. It was an agreement for bringing peace in the country, and but that agreement was signed by the Taliban leaders and the United States, and but that agreement didn't talk about making peace in the country. Huh? There is a section where both parties agreed to maintain ceasefire, and the United States government, but they said that they will remove all of its troops by the end of first May 2021, but that's never going to happen. And another thing, the Taliban leaders they sought to cut all of its ties with the Al Qaeda and other terrorist networks and all, and they also agreed to make a political roadmap for the future of Afghanistan. And of course, last but not the least, once the peace deal happened, United States promised that they would put the sanction issue against the Taliban in the United States Security Council, and they'll solve the problem. But I think recently Joe Biden, he had some another approach to deal with the peace deal in the Afghanistan, because he's going to present in the country for a bit long time. But now, even if the peace still take place, there are so many challenges which can hamper the peace for the Afghans in the future. The first one is, of course, the Taliban government. They don't want to share power anyone, with anyone. They don't even acknowledge the central government as a legitimate government. And the Taliban government, the Afghan government, on the other hand, in previous years, you have seen that they don't recognize Taliban government. They don't believe that they are the legitimate actors. But now they're coming forward. The Afghan government is coming forward, not because they are ready, they are satisfied with the peace agreement and all. But I think that they do not have any other options, because international troops are going to be gone from the country tomorrow, and Taliban's presence is everywhere. According to a report by United Nations, in 67% of the Afghan territory there are Taliban presence, and 4% of Afghan provinces are controlled by the Taliban, and from some areas Talibans are even collecting taxes, and that's how they are trying to legitimizing their presence in the country and all. And the second challenge is showing the economic growth, the building of the national army, the indicators of social factors and all. If Taliban government comes to power, I think it's going to have a detrimental effect on the social sectors, especially on the fundamental rights of the Afghan people, the role of women in the country, the role of women, especially in politics. I think is not like going to be improve in future. And in Afghanistan, as you know, that there are so many ethnic groups, there are so many groups like Pashtuns, like Tajiks, like Uzbeks, like Hazaras, and all. There are some Hindus and Sikhs as well. So there are many minorities, and they do not have their allegiances to the Taliban or to the central government. Because before making peace, we have to understand the power structure, the power fabrication in Afghan society. The Taliban government or the Afghan central government, they do not have people's allegiances. Okay, because those people, they believe that the local com, the local community, they provide justice, they provide health facilities, they provide other social facilities, facilities faster than the central government or by the Taliban. So in that regard, even if the Taliban government comes to power, or the Afghan elected government comes to power, is going to be hard for the minorities in the country. And another thing that the Taliban's leader, they have said repeatedly that they're not going to carve the fundamental principles, and that is the Sharia law, the Islamic Sharia law, because the Taliban government, if they comes to power, they are going to run the country by the Sharia law. And even in 2004, when the elected government, they enacted the new constitution. The constitution had some influence of Sharia law, but if Taliban government comes to power, the country is going to be run entirely by the Sharia law. And you know, if you see the leader selection of the Taliban is very clear that the first leader was Mullah Omar, the second one is Mullah Akhtar Mansour, and the third one is Maulavi Hibatullah. And these all leaders, they are religious scholars. They are very much sound in interpreting the Sharia law and all, and they are not going to consider the law and how they are going to run the country in that manner. But the recent approach, there are other challenges as well, because the NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, they are not that strong like they were before, or after the Brexit took place, the European Union is not that strong. When the Operation Enduring Freedom took place, there were so many European countries who involved in the Operation Enduring Freedom, but now they have their own issues to deal with. So now they are not interested in the Afghan security issue or Afghan peace issue for that matter. So the Afghanistan, they cannot hope for any kind of help from these European countries, and all. But recently, if the United States leaves the country, the regional players, they might come forward, and I'm not quite sure how the picture is going to look like for Afghanistan, because the major three players would be, of course, Pakistan, India, and China. China, they mainly have financial concern in Afghanistan, because their Belt and Road Initiative, it's a $1 trillion initiative, and for that initiative, China needs to secure Afghanistan. And also, China doesn't want any kind of extremist activities in Afghanistan, because in China, the western province of China, Xinjiang, they they have some extremist issues and all, and China believe that Xinjiang has some kind of Afghan connection. And the other Southeast Asian players, India and Pakistan. Okay, the India, when India was very much close during the Operation Enduring Freedom. It was the fourth largest bilateral donor to the Afghanistan, and even Pakistan was very much supportive of that nation building in the country. But both countries of China helped Afghanistan or associated themselves with Afghanistan when the international security assistance forces was there in the country, or the Western countries are there in the country. So if those countries, the international security assistance forces and the United States leaves the country, there might be a proxy war again, because if history repeats itself in 1992, when the Najibullah government declines, and the Mujahideen forces, the ethnic groups, they started fighting with each other. That kind of situation might take place in Afghanistan as well, because Afghanistan do not have a central government. In paper, yeah, they have, but in reality, they do not have a central government. The Taliban, they are present in both in Afghanistan and Pakistan. They have their Taliban government has support from some neighboring countries like Iran, like Pakistan. But the other players, the China and India, is also going to play their card, to take leverage of the country, because if India is it's a 1.4 billion country, and it has its ever growing energy needs, and the Central Asian states, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, they have a huge resources and all. So India needs that, China needs that, and for that, Indian government, they want good relationship with Afghanistan, because without Afghanistan, we cannot the Indian government cannot grab those resources and all. So, whoever comes to power in Afghanistan, the picture is not very hopeful for the country. And the Afghans, they are when it comes to Afghans, the local citizens, they are very resistant, and they are very tried as a nation. So they do not want any kind of foreign involvement, dealing when it comes to dealing with the country, dealing with the policies and all. So at any cost, the Afghans, the local Afghans, they want the international forces, to be gone from the country. So let's see, what future has for Afghanistan. We can only hope for the country, for the betterment of the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raj, for that presentation. It was very insightful. We're just going to go straight into the questions in the chat, and I'll take them one by one. So our
Okay.
first one is from Tandiwe, who asks, besides women, besides women having seats in parliament, do you believe that they are meaningful participating in the peace process or decision-making positions?
Can I answer now?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for the question. It's a very good question, because in this regard, I took interview of Fauzia Kufi, who is a parliamentarian in Afghanistan, and she believed that the situation of the women in Afghanistan is still very low. Okay, it's not right at all. And in the peace process, if you look at the peace process, there is very little or no participation, from the women and all. So yes, other than having the seats in parliament, they do not have those kind of development they expected to be happen in the country. Because but one thing we have to remember, that Afghanistan, the Middle Eastern country for that matter, they are very patriarchal in nature. Okay, even in the domestic issues, women they don't have a say. Okay, mainly the man of the family, they decide everything in the family. So that will take some time in Afghanistan. But because Fauzia Kufi ma'am, she was telling me, like, even the women in Afghanistan, they are changing, their social status is changing, their maternal health is improving, their participation in education is improving. But the men in Afghanistan, they are not changing themselves. Okay, so as long as the men in Afghanistan, they remain the same, it's very difficult for the women to grow, to prosper and all. So I think I have answered your question.
Awesome. Thank you. Our next question is from Catherine. I'm so interested in hearing what peace strategies can be put in place before the US troops begin to withdraw or begin the
Six.
withdrawal.
Okay. Answer this. Um, Peace strategy that United States, when they come to Afghanistan in 2001, they came to wipe out, to destroy the Al Qaeda forces and all. They didn't have any goal, any purpose to build the Afghanistan in the nation building or the state building process, and they were very clear about that. And the last deal between the United States and the Taliban, which take place in 2020 in February, that was not a peace agreement. That was an agreement for bringing peace, and that particular agreement, that agreement does not say anything about peace, and it says about the withdrawing troops and all. So I think the peace strategy should be like power, again, the power sharing, because we don't have any other options. The Afghan government do not have any other options. The Taliban government, they do not have any other options but to share power with each other. But I don't know how that thing is going to take place, because both Taliban and the Afghan government, they have their proximities with the international communities. They can reach to any other country like Russia, like Iran, like United States. So I think the United States and the other international community, they are going to leave Afghanistan on their own at least for a couple of years, until they can settle down on their own and all. But yeah, it's very bleak right now. We cannot have a fresh, bright political roadmap for the country, because no, because both parties, the Taliban and the Afghan government, they're very adamant. They're very adamant when it comes to peace deal. They're very resistant. The people, the Afghan locals, they're very resistant when it comes to peace deal. Okay, and they are fed up. The Afghan people, they are fed up of international presence in their country. They are fed up of in security forces, in media. They don't like United States government. They don't like European involvement in the country. So they say that just leave us. Okay, and their perspective of peace and their perspective of nation is very different from the Western countries. Okay, when it comes to the nation, when it comes to the country, the Afghan government, the Afghan people believe that they can handle their own situations and all. Their definition of peace is different from the definition of peace by the United States of government or by the international community. For the Taliban, the absence of the international forces is kind of peace in Afghanistan. But for the United States, for the international community, the definition of peace is entirely different. So we are not on the same page, right? So let's see what will happen for the country.
Okay, gotcha. I'm actually, you mentioned this a bit, but I'm going to press you further by highlighting a question that is asked by actually a member of our steering committee. What effects or challenges do you think the recently announced American troop withdrawal from Afghanistan will have on the Afghan peace deal? You touched on it, but I just wanted you to go at it more.
Thank you, Nicholas. The troops withdrawal. I think in recently Joe Biden, they announced their new strategy that by the time of September 2021, they will be withdrawing all of its troops. Okay, so listen, when in 2020 February, when the agreement for bringing peace was signed between the Taliban government and the United States, there is clearly mentioned that all the US troops will leave the country by 1st May 2021. Okay, but that's not going to happen. Biden has slowed down the peace process. Okay, maybe it's for the good for the country or not, we don't know right now, but they have slowed down. And another thing that was mentioned in that agreement was the ceasefire violation. Okay, the ceasefire. Okay, so the Taliban, they did not follow the agreement, and now the United States of government, they are not following the agreement as well, the 2020 agreement which was signed in February. So both parties, the Taliban and the United States, are not going to follow the agreement. I think in the future, Taliban is going to make more attacks on the civilians, on the security forces and all. And yeah, because every day there are some new policies which the United States government is putting for the country for withdrawing the troops. They're dealing their troops withdrawal and all. And even the Taliban government, they are very confused. When Joe Biden came to power, they clearly said that even Joe Biden is in power, they sincerely believe that Joe Biden would follow the Trump government policies regarding withdrawing their troops. So, the Trump government always said that they would leave Afghanistan as soon as possible, but that's not going to be happening in reality, right? Biden is going to be there for a more couple of months. So I think the Taliban government might attack on the civilians in near future.
Okay. My last question. So you mentioned a lot on some of the big players that are involved. You touched a bit on China, Russia, obviously the US. But now looking more on the neighborhood of Afghanistan, we have a question of, do you think that Afghanistan's neighboring countries are more of a help or a hindrance to the peace deal?
Uh, See, the northern neighbors in Afghanistan, the Central Asian states, frankly speaking, they have this insurgencies issues in their country, which is linked to Afghanistan, but they do not have the capabilities, the capacity to deal with that with their own. Even they need some kind of involvement of big powers like Russia, like China, like United States, and those Central Asian states, they're complete now after the BRI project, the Belt and Road Initiative project by China, they're completely dependent on China because they think the Chinese project is going to bring peace and economic prosperity in their neighboring countries and in their countries. Okay, so those Central Asian countries, they do not have any credentials to deal with that issue. The other neighboring countries is of course Iran and Pakistan, and even India share some border with Afghanistan. Pakistan, uh, they tried to mend the conflict between the Taliban and Afghanistan like more than 5 times, and they failed all the times because the Afghan government and the Taliban government, they don't believe that the another one is legitimate to talk with. So Pakistan has tried, but it failed. And when it comes to India, India never supported the Taliban government when it comes to power in 1986. If you know, in 1998, a plane was hijacked, and Air India plane was hijacked, and that took shelter in Kabul. And Taliban government supported the terrorist group in Kabul at that point of time. And even during the presence of international security forces, the Indian government, they always considered Taliban as terrorist network, terrorist organization. They never supported the government. So India, all the time, India said that the peace process would be Afghan led, Afghan owned, and Afghan controlled. But even if it's Afghan led, and Afghan control, the India doesn't have much to say because I personally believe that without the involvement of big powers, India cannot do anything in Afghanistan. Because even if a power sharing arrangement, comes to Afghanistan, where both Taliban leaders and Afghan leaders, the elected leaders are there. If Taliban leaders are there, so India is not going to consider them as legitimate government in Afghanistan. So India, in that matter, India is going to lose its interests, and they have nothing to do, with the peace deal. And China can, I think, China has a huge chance, when it comes to the peace process in Afghanistan. And when the NATO is declining, the other international organizations are declining. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is mainly led by the China, and it can play a bigger role in dealing with the country and the peace process. In future, Afghanistan might, take the peace issues, the Taliban issues to the SCO, because SCO is very much powerful both economically and militarily in Asia. So I think China can have a positive role in dealing dealing with the peace process.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you so much, Raj, for
Yeah.
being with us and for your awesome presentation. If just a reminder to the audience, the code for attending today's session will run on the screen soon. So if you're playing the conference game, please feel free to insert the code. But yes, so we've come to the end of our session. Once again, I thank you for attending. If you have any questions or you still want to engage, remember we have chat walls where the conversation can continue, also some networking rooms where you can connect with one another. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhavita.